So he says, okay, you agreed, sign the contract. He says, okay, fine. Click, I sign. So he takes you and he goes, Coon! And you go, bang. And at that bang, you look very closely, if one were there, and they would see a little newborn baby squalling and screaming, not hearing the screams to let me out of here, but just a screaming baby, newly born, lying in the broken glass, the garbage, and the dust and the dirt on the landing of a fifth-floor walk-up in the Bronx, while the 13-year-old mother, having just given birth, is hurrying down the stairs to get away. And so one begins life here. The thing that happens after that is where the action really starts. You go through that life process, and the symbology can have been 100,000 years ago. The whole symbology is still the same. And you make your exit, and you start out again. Now, originally, your intent was to take your escape velocity and go on out and continue wherever you were intending to go or whatever you intended to do. But right about here somewhere, you begin to bend a little bit. And the reason is that as you made this process through here in what we call physical life, you picked up a greater load factor than you realized. Unconsciously, you picked up that load factor. And you had friction, which slowed you up. The combination of those two is expressed in the bending of that, where you, no one else, no law, nothing else, makes the decision when you said, how many times, I got to go back. It's just something I wanted to do, and I didn't get a chance to do it. I wanted to have 5 children instead of 2, and I got to go back and have 3 more children, or some such thing. Or I never got to drink alcohol. I'd like to go back and drink some booze. Whatever the reason. And you say, oh, just say to yourself, just once, that's all, and then I'll go on my way. And so you begin that turn to make just once more, one little more run, just one more for the road or whatever. And at that moment, that decision, which was yours and no one else's, no law, no rule, just you lost your escape velocity. And you went into orbit in this area. And you went down and around again. Had another life. And as you came out of that, you still were, as in essence, above this line. So you were recognized still from whence you came. You came up around in here and you made another decision. Having lost more velocity, having picked up an additional load factor, you're here. And you say, oh, it won't hurt to go back once more. And I've always wanted to ride a camel. So you decide to go back and ride and own a camel. So round you go again and go through the process here. And again, you are steadily losing velocity, and your orbit is decaying, as you can see. Once you get below this line of demarcation, as it were, you're thinking more about here than you are about there. Your memory of you as you originally were is declining because of the overwhelming input from this human radiation. So down you go again for another life, another one, another one, another one, until you get to this point where you're locked in. And you have little, even in between life sojourns, you have little, if any, perception of this radiation from whence you came. There's a word for that, which I probably have already used, that fits it very, very accurately. And that word is, we're all have become human junkies. We're addicted to being human and the human experience. Whether that was a part of the original design, you can have your own conjecture about that. But that is fact. If you want to prove it, that's the point. You have the ability growing right now to begin to prove these things to yourself. No one else can tell you. You can prove it to yourself. So, that's the first point of entry. There are other ways that entry takes place up here. One of the more amusing ones, and you will begin to perceive these in other people. That's the fun part. One is what is called, or what used to be called, a remittance man. If you remember in the colonial empire where they had a black sheep in London of a noble family, and he was just embarrassing the family tremendously by his bouts of whatever. And so the family shipped him off during colonial empire days, say to New Zealand, Australia, Singapore, and remitted money to him monthly to keep him there, to pay him to stay away from London and the embarrassment of his presence. What happens here, it's very interesting. We will find other people, other beings, non-human, making an entry here, and they have all the appearance of having been paid to be here, and they don't really want to be here, but they've been paid here to be here because of the fact that someone sent them here and paid off to get them here. Another form of it that's equally interesting is the one that has such profound merit is the being who appears to be on the run from some other energy system, and he's looking for a place to hide. He's got to hide somewhere. And he spots this and says, "Oh, that's great." Wham! And goes in. And here are the guys after him, who can be the old version of the KGB or whatever after him. And what he doesn't know when he makes that dive is that every time he exits and ends a life sojourn, he again is over here. And when he does that, these pursuers are ready to grab him and say, "Gotcha." The other thing that makes it even worse is that when he sleeps at night, in that, you're right on the edge of it, in that past 21 era, and he's sleeping and he drifts out there, they're ready to grab him right now because he's far enough out of phase with his physical body. He's a good target, and they want to grab him. And so he has these horrible nightmares all his lifetime, trying not to sleep. He becomes deathly afraid of sleeping, and he becomes much, much more afraid of dying because that means the boys will really gotcha when he dies and take him back for whatever reason. Then there's the other types, of course, that in turn are the missionary types who perceive all of this roiling mass of disorganization and want to do something about it. You could say they're a super form of do-gooders, but they come to fix it, help it. And so they come in here, and they, in turn, the price of losing their memory, their personality, but they still try to express it. And most, if not all of them, become enmeshed in this whole cycle themselves, forgetting all about what their real motive was to help, and they get boozed up themselves. Then the other part, of which one that I'm very familiar with, is where a friend of yours gets enmeshed, and you go in then to retrieve your friend, to rescue your friend, and you too get enmeshed. More common than you think.